You guys see that theory that it's about Cedric Diggory dying, becoming a vampire, and then becoming a literal bat? That's what Batman was.
You mean the theory that it took him like almost a decade and a half to finally turn into a bat?
Exactly. Yeah.
So he went from my boy to hang on, Spider Monkey to
Vengeance.
vengeance.
Wait, when was the Goblet of Fire released?
Oh, you're gonna make us feel old. Fuck.
Uh,
That's what this podcast is about,
high
dude.
school?
I'm gonna say
Goblet of Fire?
2007.
2005.
Fuck.
We're 3 years shy of 20 years.
Jesus.
No, 10, right? No, fuck. 20 years.
I wish you guys could see Marcelo's face just like, and Brian like, yep.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of United We're Nerd, where we talk about all things nerd. I'm here with my bat-tastic co-host, Brian. How you doing, friend?
You know, I am having a bat-tastic time on this bat-tastic day.
And you're in the right bat place. And of course, alongside, can't forget, Joel. How are you, bud?
I'm doing great. Thanks for bringing me to the Bat Cave of Nerdom.
Well, by now, if you're here, and of course, if you don't read titles, we're talking about the Batman today. 2022 Batman, directed Matt Reeves. We're here to. This is going to be a full spoiler. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get into it. And we're just gonna get right in. This movie, I think, when it was originally announced Robert Pattinson is going to be now our Bruce Wayne. I think at first the internet was kind of in an uproar, guys. I don't think anybody expected this particular actor to be able to pull off the role of playboy billionaire Bruce Wayne. What do you guys think about that?
Well, you have to think about most people probably didn't really give a fuck about Robert Pattinson's career, like after seeing him in Twilight. So that's like the last image that a lot of people see is the sparkly vampire boy of Twilight. But if you actually see the work that he's done like after that, like I could have totally tell it's like, yeah, of course, why not have him try to be Batman? You know, it's not that big of a stretch. But I like right off the bat, I was like thoroughly impressed and overjoyed at how well he did in the movie.
Nobody hates Edward Cullen, Robert Pattinson, Twilight than Robert Pattinson himself. So I think everybody had the same sentiment. You know, you really didn't expect it. You know, the Twilight franchise, as big of a hit as it was, you know, for most audiences, it was just, you know, some teen, you know, kind of schlock, right? Nobody really expected the character. I mean, Kristen Stewart, you know, she's a fantastic actress in her own right, but those movies were just catered for a very specific audience, and sometimes people forget to realize that these people are just actors. Like they get paid to do and be those characters. Um, but you know, I was super hesitant at first. I mean, I love Batman, I love DC. You know, I stand by the DC and all of the shit pile that it's been up to this point. You know, 2022 has been the DC year, I feel. I mean, so far we have so much Marvel stuff coming out, but I, I'm preferential. I prefer DC over Marvel in general. You know, I like the characters in DC more than Marvel characters, and that's my personal preference. And so coming into this movie, I was like, "Oh man, can he do it? Can he do it?" Like I think we're just so used to seeing, you know, all of these older actors playing an older Batman. You know, like Christian Bale, very, you know, seasoned, very kind of very these two Batmans, like they're so different from each other. It's so insane. Um, yeah. What about you, Joel? What did you think about Robert being Bruce Wayne?
You know, kind of like you guys, like, hey, Edward Cullen's gonna be Batman, but also like, you know, I having actually watched Twilight in the last 5 years, I was like, okay, he got a lot of flack for it, but like you said, he's an actor. At the end of the day, did his job. Um, when I first saw the trailer, though, I was like, wow, this is what DC should have been doing before. And I like I said before, I'm very Marvel leaning, but this was like, oh, I actually want to see this. This looks great, looks dope. And then, as time goes by, we're hearing more and more. And then, we heard good reviews. Like, you know what? Let's go check it out. And it's such a big turnaround from the Batman I think we've been seeing, especially with, you mentioned Bale, and then there's Batfleck, and then, of course, the other campy ones, which, they do inspire what comes next. But I think with this one, it was, I mean, we're going to get into it, but it's like they took everything that they knew they needed to work on and they just meshed it together so well, and it just works. And the ensemble is really strong too. Robert Pattinson did an awesome job, but I think he also did an awesome job because his crew, his team, the actors he's with, is just they're like all standing on each other's shoulders to bring out this great movie, I feel.
Well, let's talk about that. This cast was so strong. It had such a strong cast that really helped really bring everything to life. Everything that Matt Reeves wanted for this movie, the tone, the themes, everything was really handled well by all the actors. I mean, I just really got to give a shout out to like Colin Farrell, man. That the prosthetics and the makeup that
Yo,
went into creating the Penguin was insane. Like, and many people went into the theater not knowing it was Colin Farrell. And there's stories of Colin Farrell walking around in the costume and him being stopped by people like, "Hey, you can't go there." It's like, no, I can't because I'm Colin Farrell. you know, it's crazy. Zoe Kravitz did an amazing job. Of course,
Mhm.
Paul Dano is an amazing actor, and he's such a good a creep. It's such a bad. Such a bad way to describe him. But if you've seen movies like, I don't know if you guys have seen that movie Prisoner
Oh yeah,
with that one is who's in
Hugh
that?
Jackman, Jake
Hugh
Gyllenhaal.
Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. Paul Dano's in that, and he is that probably one of my favorite Paul Dano movies. It's amazing. Of course, Jeffrey Wright. We've all seen shows like
Jeffrey
oh
Wright.
Westworld,
he what is it?
Westworld.
Westworld. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Westworld, and he's so strong in that. God, and Andy Serkis, man, when he's not covered in dots and bubbles and CGI, he's still an amazing, such a strong
See,
actor.
people keep forgetting that he's an actual good actor, and it's not like no, he's not just like the monkey guy. He's not the ape guy. It's like he's been an actor for a long time. He fell into the mocap just because it was like a new thing, and like he pretty much like at the time like pioneered like the mocap like industry for the most part. But at the end of the day, you still need a very strong actor to pull off like even believing that something like Caesar can exist on screen, but actually make it like believable. So I, I had no doubts that he was going to pull off a very good Alfred, but I want to fall back to Jeffrey Wright. I think this is probably one of my favorite versions of Gordon,
Really?
like on screen. I felt him and Robert's Pattinson's just chemistry played off really well in this movie. Like you could
Yeah.
tell that they were just syncing up. Like every scene that they're like every time they were on screen together, I wanted to see more. I wanted to see like what they would do together as a team.
I liked Jeffrey Wright, but like God, it's so hard because I feel like Gary Oldman did such an amazing job as Gordon too.
Oh yeah.
It's just these, and it's hard to compare these movies because when we think about it, and we'll get into it, tonally, plot wise, they are so different from each other. They're in two for me. They're in two different genres of movie. Yeah, they're both superhero movies, but one is like a fantastical kind of over the top, really animated, really over like, you know, uh, really animated. Where this one is very much on the ground. It's very much it's gritty. It's he's doing his own work. That the billionaire-ness of it doesn't come out like it does in like the Dark Knights in like the Christopher Nolan Batmans or like the Tim Burton Batmans where he's got these big fancy fucking jets and planes and stuff like that, and they really flaunt that Bruce Wayne billionaire like aspect of everything. Here it's fucking a dude on a bike rolling around the city in the rain like until he gets into a jet powered fucking race car. But it's not relatable, but it's more human, if that makes sense.
Yes.
At least that's how it feels to me.
It's a lot more down to earth for sure. Just because like we're getting to see an on-screen Batman that we haven't really seen.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the times that we have a live action movie of Batman, it's always like he's very established into kind of like who he is. And so it's like you have that Batman, like full-fledged Batman persona, and then you have like the billionaire, like philanthropist, like Bruce Wayne. Where this, where in this movie, you have a Bruce Wayne that is still kind of dealing with the trauma and kind of like just the overall, just kind of done with it all kind of attitude towards his parents dying. And it's like he's not fully committed into kind of living up to being a Wayne. And so he's in his second year of being Batman and kind of just using that as a vehicle to kind of vent his frustrations, but also try like in his mind trying to do good for Gotham City. Of course, we'll find out later that he was going about it the wrong way, but it's a very interesting take for a live action Batman because we've seen like comic and animated many different versions of Batman, but I feel like as far as like live action goes, this is a very unique take, which is weird because like you'd think that as far as like Batman goes, like we would have seen something like this by now, but to have like a more grounded kind of like detective noir kind of Batman is interesting.
Mm-hmm. So let's just kind of go into it. Let's start overall. Just give me like your overall thoughts. What were your, like out of how many bats? Let's say out of 10 bats, what would you rate this movie for yourself? And then give me some overall thoughts. Like what was your overall opinion about this movie?
Maybe because it's fresh for me still. Like, I still like really enjoyed it. I'm gonna say a strong 10, 10 out of 10
Really?
for being fresh, down to earth, the greatest. He actually does detective work. They do the commentary on the real world and with the subtleness, but still presence, which is nice. Like it's here, you can't ignore it. But they're not like it's not super imposed though. At the same time, it's like, oh, this is what you're talking about, and it's very graceful. Also, um, just lost my thought. There it is. It is funny and campy and serious, and they mix it well, as opposed to Batfleck, all serious, a couple jokes. The Schumacher ones or Burton ones, all camp, little bit of serious, right? Again, I think it's just overall like a good movie with good moments too. It just shines. And then again, I'm going back to the detective work. He actually puts in the work to solve the mysteries and the crime. I love the bail shit and Batfleck had money, but he's like figuring it out. He works with Alfred and sometimes not really well, but he's young, he's jaded, but he's working on it. He's using his technology and in a smart way too. And it just made it enjoyable. And the fact that like it's year 2, he's inexperienced, it adds to it too. There's a moment he gets blasted with a shotgun because he's being a little careless, but for kind of a good reason. It's like, oh shit, is he done? But he still has the good armor. He's fine. And another one, he's swinging in his glider suit and he gets fucked up when he catches on the bridge. And I'm just like, this fucking guy should be decapitated. Of course, it's PG-13. He's gonna be okay. But it's like, shit, man, he doesn't have it together, and that's makes it great. Honestly, it's so good. And I've been talking to a bunch of different people. I actually put this above Begins, above Dark Knight Rises and all the rest. Like, I don't know about Dark Knight because that is like super high stakes, really good action all the way. But if they continue the trend of what they've been doing, this trilogy will surpass the Nolan trilogy, and for good reason. It's just well crafted and a lot of good thoughts. And for a while, I've been complaining to Marcelo and other friends like DC needs to do their own thing, right? They're trying to catch up to Marvel and the Avengers, and this shows me they're doing their own thing, and I'm happy to see more.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I do agree that I feel like starting with this movie with the Batman, that DC is finally kind of getting off of that we need to be Marvel, the train that started with Batman versus Superman. So it's kind of nice that we're getting kind of back to the way DC used to be, where it's like they'll just make a story just to make it, and then if they want to do something down the line that crosses over with something, they can. But they're just focusing on one story, and that's it. That's why I probably have to give it a 9.
Okay.
I really like this movie. There are some like small things that I can understand, like like when you think about it too much, it kind of doesn't make sense. But that's kind of like up to like suspending belief,
Mhm.
kind of thing for like a lot of superhero movies. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie. It's just I don't know. There's just something about it where you can tell that the detail was there and the love was there. And I think I forgot. I think it was an interview with Robert Pattinson talking about his preparation for being Batman. And apparently, Matt Reeves handed him a few comics and was like, "Here, read these. Don't read anything else." And it was like Year One Batman and some other issues that are kind of like going with the theme of the movie that they're making. He's like, "Here, read these, and don't read anything else." And so that's what he went to read, and I think Matt Reeves said, "Don't watch any of the other movies." And Robert Pattinson was like, "Well, I grew up with those movies, so it's too late. I watched them again anyway." But it's like really cool because like apparently because of that, like he said he was very interested in like reading like the Court of Owls and like other Batman comics. So it's like you can tell that there is love going into making this movie, and it really shows. So, and just I don't know who sound mixed this movie, but I believe that they deserve an award because goddamn, not only do I think that the music was perfectly picked and made for this movie, but just like the sound effects itself, like when he's beating down on that like gang leader in like the first 15 minutes of the movie, oh, you can feel like I don't know if there's D boxes in our theater, Joel, but like I felt those punches. Holy shit.
I think there
It was
were,
so
but
good.
it was like icing on the cake. Like it
But
was mixed
it's like
really well.
you felt the resonance in
Yeah.
your chest. For every like fucking punch they brought down on that dude. But and just like the overall theming of the movie, I thought was done really well because I know we'll probably talk about it in a little bit, but it's interesting that even though in the end technically Batman fails, he gains a moral victory out of the whole thing.
Hmm.
And I thought that was really cool because like yeah, it's nice to have like the happy like, oh, the superhero saves the day, but it's like it's nice to have kind of like that complex like, storytelling, especially knowing now that they are going to plan to move this forward and just to see where that trajectory goes will be very interesting.
Yeah. I for me this movie's a 9. It's not, I mean, with any movie it's never 100% perfect, so there's definitely a couple of things for me, plot wise, there's a couple little things that um I didn't have issues with, but I was like, I could have done 5 minutes of this less or something like that because the movie is 3 hours long. Now, when you're in it and you're watching it for the first time, of course you don't feel those 3 hours. But there's definitely some moments where I was just like, okay, well, this could have been a little bit shorter, or this could have been a little bit different, But overall, this movie, I mean, of course, at this point, it's my favorite DC movie that's come out, and it's definitely up there with some of my top movies. I think what I liked about this is that yes, it was a superhero movie, but it wasn't a superhero movie because he's not out there, um, fucking calling his bat jet to come and like swoop him up. This motherfucker's putting on a jumpsuit and then eating it like Joel said, just on the pavement. He's driving a normal motorcycle. I think the most outlandish thing that he had in this whole movie, besides this bat suit, was the fucking car. Right? That's not
Hell yeah.
which we'll get
Oh,
into, but we'll talk about the car because that was like
Collective jizzing right there.
I told you guys that's probably my favorite iteration of the Batmobile to date. So this movie was a solid 9. It did some really great work, and I really think that Warner Brothers is finally kind of catching on a little bit late, but they're finally like, all right, well, we should probably be a little bit more hands off and just let these directors and writers and stuff just kind of go with what they think. I mean, that's how we ended up with shows like Peacemaker. Could you imagine if it was like any different? Peacemaker wouldn't have been as successful as it would have been, or the Suicide Squad. I can't. That movie is a fucking whole redo of probably one of the worst movies ever made. But this movie is so solid. It's the acting, the editing, the music, the score, everything was just so perfect. In almost every way. So I'm definitely, I didn't even realize that they were doing other sequels. So that makes me really excited because I enjoyed this. I'd really like to see more. Yeah, no, absolutely. I really, yeah, I can't. This movie did almost everything perfect, and it's really awesome to see for a DC movie because I personally am getting kind of tired of like the Marvel formula, kind of the same kitsch, the same kind of goofiness, and for me, it's not hitting as much anymore. I just feel like it's like oversaturated. So this was a nice little break while being able to enjoy like one of my favorite superheroes, right? Like this was like, okay, cool. He's got the suit, he's got the car. All right, cool. This is the shit. Let's go. Yeah, so what I wanted to do next is kind of talk about what you guys thought about like the plot line of the movie. Did you did you guys have any issues with it? What did you guys think? I'll start. So movie started off really awesome. I think what I really appreciated about this movie, we didn't see a parent death scene again. We didn't see
yeah.
right. How many times have we seen Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot in an alley by some fucking thug? Right.
How many times do we need to see the pearls fall to get the
How
idea?
many times do we need to see
At
those
least
pearls
50 right now.
like the wet floor, and then little Bruce standing there like, oh, how
Like
like
the Superman movie.
this movie gave us an already semi-established Batman. The whole movie starts off with him saying, people when they see the bat signal, they know to run and to be afraid. It's already established. We know who Batman is already, guys. We've been dealing with Batman since fucking what, the 60s?
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to know that his parents get shot and murdered and it leads them down this rabbit hole to want to fight for vengeance and justice and be this whole fucking thing. Like, just give me Batman. I know who he is. I know what he looks like, damn it. And so for them to start off the way they did was so strong. It's very brutal. It's so brutal.
Ooh.
Like, he just beats down on people so much in this movie.
I want to make a little insert here, going back to the sound design. I love how they brought up how everybody's afraid that he might be in the shadows, and it's like Batman most of the time is very quiet, but the moment when he arrives, the idea to have like those just heavy footsteps creeping into like the tiny little light that there is, fucking perfect. They did it every time he was about to come in and kick ass. It was I loved it.
What did you think, Joel? How did you feel about the first like 15 minutes of the movie?
You said everything I thought. You said it all. It's. I'm so glad we didn't see the Waynes die again. Yes, there's a Batman. He's ready to kick ass, and again, like, is he in the shadows? I don't know. Probably err on the side of caution, right? And that was just a nice touch for something. We know this character already really well. Even since you're little, you know about Batman, and then you still get a fresh take on it. And I just done really well.
Yeah, I mean, he's the Dark Knight, right? In most media that we know, he kind of lurks in the shadows. He kind of comes up on you by surprise. In this one, he's like, "Fuck you! I'm gonna walk out at you as slow as possible out of a dark alley, and I'm gonna have you throw the first punch, and I'm gonna beat the shit out of you, and then you're gonna hurt, and everybody else is gonna hurt, and you're gonna know." Um, so we get that first crazy scene. He beats the shit out of people, and then the next thing we see, which I think I might be flipping it around. I don't remember if the Riddler kills first or if Batman comes out first. I'm flipping those two.
The Riddler opens the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was out of a horror movie for me. That was intense as fuck for me. Being a fan of horror movies, to see him stalking the mayor like that and just kind of like coming up on him and then viciously beating him to death, I was like, oh shit, this is... God, could you imagine if this movie was rated R?
Oh god, it'd be so much more blood. But like, just like imagine, like, who'd have thought that they would decide to open the movie with like just binocular like vision
Mm-hmm.
and just like heavy breathing,
Mm-hmm.
watching like the mayor in his like apartment, and it lingered there for at least
It
2
really
minutes.
did.
And it's like, oh, this is kind of unsettling, but it works because they wanted to make the Riddler very unsettling because he's a serial killer who's just going around knocking off public officials, some that, maybe deserved it, but still, it's like it's such a different take on the Riddler because we're so used to like the Jim Carrey, zany Edward Enigma, just like guy in a question mark jumpsuit,
Dude with big electrified hair and...
orange hair, and like a bowler hat. So this is a very like different
Yeah, he was in a
approach
he
to
all
the
he
character.
was in a military job. So here, hold really quick. Let me just... We're gonna talk about the characters in a little bit, but I just want to say that I can no longer wear the glasses. That I own the pair of glasses that the Riddler owns, and now I can't
Oh
wear them. I
no!
don't feel...
Oh
I
no!
was like, I know those glasses.
Gonna find you on a website selling
Yeah, right.
rifles.
Okay, cool. So we get introduced to the Riddler, we get introduced to Batman, both really savagely, very, very intense. And then we find, kind of moving forward, we find a thumb, just a thumb, on a hard drive or whatever. Just, yep, he cut somebody's thumb up and
Thumb
stuck
drive.
it. Oh,
That was so smart. Just a smart bit of writing.
yeah, what this movie does a really good job of too is really immersing you into Gotham City, not just Bruce Wayne, not just Batman, but Gotham City, right? There's a lot in this movie that talks about like the police department, the DA's office, all, the mobsters, just everyday civilians. It really kind of brings you into that world, right? So we get taken to is it Carmine Falcone's club, right? That the Penguin just kind of runs.
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
Right. So we get, we see what goes on at night. We see what happens after hours. We see this dope ass club with dope ass music, by the way. I was like feeling it the whole time. I was like, hell yeah. and then we get introduced to the Penguin, which, man, like I said, I can't really stop. I can't. He's such a great actor. It was so
Such a
well
good
done.
job.
And we get introduced, of course, to our other. Would you say Selena's a protagonist in this movie, guys?
I would say that she's not. I think it's one of those things where like she kind of starts out as a protagonist and then kind of shifts towards more of an anti-hero.
Right, because it ends up becoming more like self-interest kind of things,
Yeah.
which it pretty much was the whole time. And then we kind of see that. So really what we start seeing in the movie is that everybody's fucking corrupt. Fucking everybody except Batman and Gordon. Everybody else is literally fucking on somebody's payroll.
Mhm.
So we then, we see that Batman follows Selina home, finds her friend, and then she goes back to pick up that passport, right? Find out Batman asks Selina for help. She goes back to the club, and then we get the DA, Gil, which, shit, we know what happens after that. I feel like the pacing up to that point was really solid. We kind of got everything really solid. It was really clear motive. Selena said, I'm only doing this because I want to find my friend. Literally, cool. We know. Like, cool, we can move on. There's no secret kind of undertone to it. It's literally what she wants to do is find her friend. And, after we're kind of now in general, just kind of at like the memorial service. Now, for what was interesting for me is we got very, 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 very little Bruce Wayne in this movie. He is such a small part of the overall movie. Mostly, he's in his batsuit the whole time. It's crazy to me in this movie how people react to Bruce Wayne entering a room. He's like the fucking superstar.
Well, because you have to think they framed it so well as like this is a Bruce Wayne that is a recluse. He doesn't he doesn't care about having a public image. He doesn't want to be seen. He'd much rather be Batman. So like, and they showed that off where he is. If I had to like put it in percentage, I want to say he's Batman like generously like 80% of the time in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and 20% he's Bruce Wayne. So it's like, and they did a good job of making it show like, oh, this is a special occasion. It's like nobody sees Bruce Wayne that often. Oh, look at like he's here, you know. And I thought it was done really well. Um, Now, how they keep that going for like the next movie they make, I don't know what will change at that point. But I think for this movie, they did a fantastic job of like really showing the motives of characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We see in the movie that Gil Colson, the district attorney for Gotham City, has been abducted by the Riddler and has been strapped with some saw time bomb around his neck. Which, again, this is if this movie was rated R, it'd be so intense because how many DC movies do we see someone literally getting blown up? Like it was such an intense scene. That movie had that whole scene in the where they were holding the service had me anxious, man. When he was doing the quiz, had me on pins and needles. I was like, oh, like what's he gonna do? And I didn't think he would do it. He did. He blew him the fuck up. Like,
And Batman was just fine.
yep. I mean, he took it. So okay, sorry. So here's where it was weird, right? He wakes up, he gets blown up, he wakes up in the police station, and like, how long has he been passed out? At no point during that time did nobody decide, hey, you know what? Let me just rip his mask off. Like,
I think it's either said that it was approximately like half an hour to 45 minutes of them taking him, carrying him all the way to the police station and then putting him on the table.
That whole scene was wacky to me. The police station scene was so weird to me. It's just like it was like a Benny Hill thing, right? All of these police officers are chasing after the Batman after he escapes the police station. It was so funny to me
Oh,
because they're like lining the stairs and they're all like pointing and shooting up at him. It was like that was like the wackiest scene ever for me.
oh no, but can I just say this is one of the reasons why I think that this version of Bruce and Gordon are like perfect. Just because that whole scene where it's like, "Hey guys, you know, I'm the only one that can get through to him. Just give me the room for a second." And they're like, "All right, Gordon, this is your one opportunity." And so they all leave the room, and then fucking Gordon gets up close to fucking Batman, and then it's like he's looking like it's like he like gives like a little like punch, like, "Why the fuck do you do that?" And then like he like whispers and it's like, "Okay, I have the key to the door. You take her right down the hall, leads you straight
Yeah.
to the stairwell.
Yeah. He punched the
You're gonna have
shit
to
out
punch
of him.
me."
Punched the shit out of him.
He's a homie though.
It was, I don't know if it was intended to be comedy, but I found it so funny when everybody starts running out and just starts chasing him and like toppling over each other to get to the Batman. Like, and he's just running through the fucking police station, just out, out, out.
Well, that kind of goes to what you're saying, Joel, about like there's like a good mix of campiness, especially in that scene.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it it's equal parts serious and equal parts goofy as fuck, and I enjoyed it. Them. We were talking about it, and it's like them running through the cops running through the hall. It's like charging, let's get the Batman. But also like they're seriously trying to catch him, but while shooting up their own building, or like face palming and shit. But it's great, and just again like Gordon, Jeffrey Wright, great supporting actor. He did awesome in the Bond movies. Here, just as good, and it just really feels like, he's a homie to the Batman. If no one else got the Batman, Gordon's got the Batman. This movie, so that was a fun scene. Yeah, I think we were talking about in a big group of our friends when we were playing on Xbox. Like, no one thought to remove the mask. At the same time, I feel like he would have a contingency if, like, even if Gordon was like, you know what, let's see who it really is. At the same time, Gordon's got his back. It's like, no. Keep trust with the Batman. I need to, keep his identity safe.
Well, that just goes to show how much he trusts. Like in the end, he actually trusted Gordon because I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think at any moment during that scene, like he questioned Gordon's like intentions at all. Like, yeah, he was pissed off because everybody else is trying to grab at his mask, but I don't think he ever like really was like, "I trusted you."
Following the police station scene, we get to probably the best scene in this movie. We get to the docks or the warehouse, where the Penguin is found to be dealing drugs and still running his drug ring. Selena Kyle shows up, and now she kind of is starting to show her true colors. Right, she's stealing money, which she said that she's owed, and then she finally finds her friend's body. And then a shootout incurs. People start shooting at each other. Blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Selena runs away with the cash, and all of a sudden, Penguin gets in his car, starts hauling ass, and all of a sudden, we see it just in the corner of the fucking warehouse. We hear that fucking car turn on, and that sound is probably one of the coolest just sound design for fucking anything, for any of the movies that I've ever seen. That car turning on, I like, since I saw the movie over the weekend, I go on YouTube every morning and fucking play it, right? Like, I need to hear it.
You should send it to me. I want to wake up with that.
And a really, really great chase scene ensues. And so that was all practical, I think, for the most part. Like, him running through the gas tanker was a practical design.
Matt Reeves.
And yeah, go ahead.
No, Matt Reeves really loves his practical effects because
And he
like most
said
of
that
that
it
chase scene
had to
was
be
practical.
practical. He said it had to be practical. There's no way that that scene was going to work if it was CG, and he's so right because it's just so visceral. It's so raw to see that. You know, it's like watching Mad Max Fury Road, right? Like you see those cars getting tossed around.
Yeah.
It totally leaves a different reaction uh, to the audience. I feel because you see that thing running around. Oh man, the Batmobile is so. Oh, it's insane.
I just want to backpedal a little. He actually, again, remember, he's year 2. He stalls it for a second. It jumps forward, and it's like, oh fuck, there's a pause. But
Did he
then,
really?
yeah,
It did.
once it gets going, it's the bat, and it's like, oh shit, this thing's gonna fly. And yes, I agree. The sound design for that fucking engine, that was icing on the cake, that bat cake.
See, because I can really appreciate just like the design of this Batmobile. Like the other Batmobiles had like their cool little quirks to them, but I feel like this one just is very special, just because of how like kit bashed it looks.
Mhm.
Because it looks like he just got like a muscle car, and then him and Alfred just like spent months building this fucking jet engine that they just slapped on the back. And I actually just remembered this, but earlier in the movie, it's one of the first scenes like in like the Batcave with him and Alfred, and you actually see the engine on an engine block.
Yep.
Like, I think Alfred's actually like working on it, so it's just like, oh man, later on in the movie you get to see that thing fucking go. And I agree. I think it's one of the coolest sounds because literally when like the engine starts revving, it's like a demon's being unleashed, and like you can kind of see just like the sparks of the engine just like kind of filtering through like the hood of the car. And it's like, if I was like one of those goons, like outside, I was like, I would run.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to stick because like someone with that kind of car is going to do massive damage, and he kind of did.
So I don't really typically buy like Lego sets anymore, but they have a Lego Technic Batmobile set for $100 that I will be buying so that I can
Oh,
build it and have it in my office. I was like, I have to have this. This is so cool. Um, yeah, amazing scene. The sound design for that whole scene. I saw this movie in IMAX. I don't know about you guys, but I saw this in IMAX.
We did not.
Oh man, it was intense. It was so loud, but it's like we like cars, right? Joel, you like a muscle car. Brian, I'm assuming you like a muscle car here and there. And just have that roaring sound just kind of
Oh, yeah.
vibrating through the movie theater. It was so good.
I can only
Um,
imagine.
so we find out that Penguin was not the rat. He wasn't the informant. And it leads them to the orphanage that's funded by the Wayne Foundation or what was it called? It was like the
Arkham, right? I don't know.
no, it was whatever that
It was like
foundation that they created.
it was like the renewal fund,
Yeah,
Something like that, right? And we
or it
find
was
out
supposed to be funded by the renewal fund.
and we find out kind of a dark history about the Wayne family and what Thomas did for Martha and stuff like that. Now, I'm not too familiar with like the year one stuff, so I don't know how much of this came from like the comics. I'm not familiar with like the whole Martha Wayne being like institutionalized and Thomas, I don't know how much of that is based off of like a novel or a comic versus something that was just written for the movie. I don't know if you guys know.
I will say in the Telltale, they hinted at the Waynes like fudging money and working with crime bosses. So I think that's probably a theme that is current in like Batman lore or in the past. But as far as institutionalized Martha, I gotta guess that's pretty fresh.
Yeah, I think the idea of Martha being in Arkham is a new concept for this movie. Because as far as I know, like I'm not like super clued into everything Batman. I think that's like a very new concept for at least like his parents' origin.
It really changes a lot, honestly, when you take into consideration who Batman and Bruce Wayne are as characters and how much influence they derive from Thomas Wayne and how much he looked up to his father and stuff like that. To kind of see this damaged or flawed parenting, it's really interesting because it really develops Bruce because he becomes so angry about it. Like how he approached Alfred, who of course had knowledge about this because he's Alfred, right? Alfred's always there for the Waynes. And after he got, go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
No,
What you got?
no, I think you're coming up on that important piece of information.
Alfred, gets blown the fuck up. And that whole scene when he's like racing towards Wayne Manor or the Wayne penthouse or wherever he's staying at, and he's like calling and calling and calling and calling, and finally somebody picks up. That little time jump I thought was so cool because you thinking it's in the moment, like he's gonna get to him, but he was like, nah, he was late by like a lot. He was late by like 30 minutes, and like Alfred's already dying. like like that their other maid or whatever picks up the phone. She's like, oh dude, yeah, like 30 minutes ago, and it's like everything's on fire in
And
the
you see like the firefighters in the background.
right.
Hogwarts is
Fucking
fucked up.
Alfred being a champ and just tossing that
Yeah.
fucking bomb.
He took a fucking bomb to the face.
Alfred's legit.
But
Yeah, back in the hospital though.
we find out that at least the way it seems at the moment, Thomas hired Falcone to help him silence a journalist, right? He's trying to bury this information about Martha Wayne and how she killed somebody, right? That's what she like killed somebody, or she'd had like
No,
a
it was just kind of like the Arkhams were kind of had like a dark past,
yeah.
and just like the fact that she had to be institutionalized for a while just because of her mental health, I guess.
I didn't want it to hurt Big Daddy
The
Wayne's
mayor
image.
campaign.
Yeah, that's what it was. His run.
And then so we have this really, really intense conversation between Bruce Wayne and Falcone, which, John Turturro, I could have never pictured him as a mob boss. When I think of him as the guy from Mr. Deeds, as the butler, so for him to be this character was super interesting. They had really good chemistry together in that scene, I feel. Like for him to be like, "Oh yeah, he asked me to do it, and like there's only one way to do it, and like I was like I had to make sure that I protected, which at that time I feel like he kind of was like I just needed to protect my friend or whatever, right?"
Because he was like saying it's like how much like he owed Thomas a favor because like he was literally dying and he brought him into their house to like do like emergency surgery on him pretty much.
Right. And so for him, in that scene, Falcone, and we're backtracking kind of back to the beginning, before at the steps before they go into the memorial service for the mayor before Coulson blows up and we have the whole chase scene in the police station. Falcone definitely took it as, oh, my friend saved my life rather than, oh, he took the Hippocratic Oath. He's a doctor. Of course, he's not going to let you die. Right. So very kind of the very different opinions about what that relationship was. And then Big, which again, I don't know. I wish I knew, but we find out that Selena Kyle is Falcone's like estranged daughter, right? That there was somebody that worked at the club that Falcone, assaulted, whatever it is. I didn't remember that part, but she has a baby and he has her mother killed. And so we find out that she's got this vendetta against him that he wants to get back at him for, which kind of goes back to, oh, he owes me this money, right? He owes me that money because it's mine. I'm his daughter. And then this is kind of where Batman and Selena Kyle kind of diverge as far as like their true intentions. You know, Batman is seeking justice and vengeance. I guess like he keeps saying vengeance, but he's seeking justice in the right way, where Selena just wants to straight up kill him, right? And so this is where this huge divide kind of comes between them, because all she wants to do is she's out for revenge, and she's just saying she's seeing red. That's what she's going for. So she's going in. She goes to the club to kind of, take revenge on her friend, her mom, and just kind of everything. And so, luckily Batman gets to her in time and, prevents that from happening, right? He gets arrested. They're walking out of the club, and we heard that quote earlier in the movie about bringing Falcone into the light. Like, we're going to bring him into the light. We're going to bring him to justice or whatever. But literally, he walks outside. He starts to get into a fight with the Penguin, we find out that Falcone is the person who was giving the DA's office inside information about the Salvatore Moroni's operation, which is what got him shut down, right? And out of nowhere, you just hear a shot ring out, and Falcone's dead. And
What a scene.
Yeah.
right? Wasn't that crazy?
Because like legit, how it was framed up, it was like, because the Penguin and Falcone started arguing, and it looked like Falcone, or not Falcone, but it looked like Penguin was gonna pull out a gun and shoot Falcone.
Mhm.
But then like you see like he's only halfway like pulling out, and just hear a gunshot. It's like, the fuck. And then of course, wouldn't you know it, you kind of like look up and you see a guy in a window. You can only assume that it's the Riddler, just like domed Falcone in the light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he lets himself get caught.
Yep.
Like, he just lets himself get caught. And he goes to talk to him in prison and kind of talks him in I guess what ends up happening, which that conversation in general was really crazy, because the Riddler, if I kind of remember correctly, kind of thinks that him and Batman have a lot more in common than Batman thinks, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're out for the same thing. We're out for justice. We're out to, rid the streets of all this lies and corruption and trash, which of course, yes, but in very, very different ways. What we end up finding out is that it looks like Batman missed a huge piece of the overall puzzle. We missed a huge part of what the Riddler's true plan was. So we have to go back to his, his lair, whatever you want to call it, that little apartment. And all of a sudden, what we realize is that he's about to blow a bunch of cars to release the seawall to flood Gotham City. And this is one of those movies, again, where it kind of diverges from normal superhero movies, where it actually happens. They didn't stop this from happening. He fucking blew up those walls.
Mhm.
And I think for me was like the kind of the whole thing for me was like, how many people actually died in this movie as a result of that?
Many,
right?
many. Like if you just imagine like Gotham City being like the representation of New York, a whole bunch of people.
I mean, that city got
Just
flooded.
gone.
Yeah. Like the whole city floods, right? So
Oh, yeah.
everybody kind of starts to evacuate towards the big, Madison Square Park-ish big stadium where the newly elected mayor is holding her celebration thing. What did you guys think of that scene in in that Superdome place? That's essentially the end of the movie there. Where it's kind of like that's kind of the last action piece that we get for that movie. For me, what's really crazy is, again, it's very, these things could happen in real life, which is sad to say, but these kind of things, what happened in that whole scene could be very real in an unfortunate situation. Just people hanging out the top of a tower with like rifles shooting down at the crowd, right? And for what was crazy about that scene was, one, Batman kicked the fuck out of everybody, but for him to get like a straight up shotgun to the chest,
Double barrel, baby.
he took that. That shit was crazy. He took that shotgun blast straight to the chest, and what's great is he like his breath got knocked out of him. Like he couldn't like get up after that. He was like, "What the fuck?"
He got fucked.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. No, I mean that whole final scene I think was really, really great. You know, it really shows the power of you know, the Riddler had a lot of control because of his radical, you know, opinions, because he's expressive and brings it out to the light. You know, there's always those groups of people who are always willing to follow those same types of thoughts. So for that many people to show up to kind of continue with what the Riddler was wanting, his true message, was pretty interesting to me.
Joel, go for it.
I just want to say, backtrack a little. I thought it was like cinematic genius with him saying boom with the explosions going off in the window. That for me, simple, but so damn effective. Him just yelling boom with the explosions going off. I was like, wow, that's just great. And then, but yeah, you know, it feels almost too real world. Like, oh, your city's infrastructure sucks. Fuck you. I'm going to flood the city. And then all the people converge to one spot. It's like, hey, by the way, my fucking weird ass, creepy, invasive supporters are gonna shoot y'all, you know, and they got easy access to guns. And then, you know, Batman does what he does. He kicks their ass, gets that nice shotgun blast. You know, he severs the electricity so no one gets shocked. You know, he chooses his hero moment, right? He knows. But even before that, our buddy Fernando pointed out to us, to resuscitate himself, he injects himself with the Venom formula, like gets his adrenaline going. And I was like, oh shit, that's a nice little touch that he's like, oh, I need to get back in this and kick some more ass.
And he beats the shit out of that guy.
Right? They have to like pull him off the guy.
Yeah.
Like he like goes crazy.
Like if Gordon wasn't there, he was gonna crush that guy's face.
That guy was gonna be fucking dead. Yeah, a good last scene, and it just goes back to what you said. Like he didn't win. He didn't actually do a good job, but morally, you know, he did the right thing. He almost completely stopped the Riddler. He did most of it, but you know, he missed some pieces of the puzzle, like you said. And but yeah, it just shows like, hey, he didn't get corrupted, and I think was, you know, everyone is pretty corrupted, but he himself has not yet been. You know, he goes a little too extreme when kicking some people's ass, you know, but he hasn't betrayed people in the city, he feels. And I think it was just a good ending to everything, you know, all that groundwork they've been laying. And I was kind of worried, like No Way Home was like 3 hours, didn't feel like it. I was like, DC doesn't really feel, you know, like they've been doing it. But with this movie, I was like, oh, I can keep going. Like it doesn't feel like 3 hours. So what about you, Brian?
It looks like Marcelo looks like he had something to say real quick.
No, all I was gonna say was what this ending really does for Batman as it is in year 2 is that his position as a vigilante for Gotham City isn't about enacting vengeance on people, right?
Yep.
It's about giving people hope
Mhm.
to you know, to not be afraid, to know that they're protected, and that, you know, it was really interesting because, you know, that whole one of the final scenes is you see him in daylight helping carry people out. Like he's not just there to kick ass, he's there to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a really great character development piece for him to really take him, which, you know, we'll see how he is in the other two, but kind of going back overall, you know, this is a very different Bruce Wayne. He's not eccentric. He doesn't flaunt his money. He doesn't buy out a Russian ballet troupe to go and, you know, fly across the world to kidnap a tycoon or anything like that, right? He's just literally the guy down the street who just happens to wear a mask. which what I liked about this movie and how they wrote Batman is that they don't let his fortune and money control like his how he figures shit out, right? It's a very different way than what we're used to.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I by the end of this movie, I really appreciated the overall arc for Batman. Like we are saying, like he doesn't win. Like
No.
the Riddler eventually, his plan does succeed to an extent. Like he has, even though the Riddler didn't fully succeed, he created enough terror and like he threw a wrench in the whole system. Now everything's all fucked up. But for Batman and Bruce Wayne, um, we get to see a full character arc that I think if you go back and watch the movie again, you can really appreciate it the second time. Just because when you start the movie out, you can actually start seeing the similarities between Riddler and Batman, just as how they operate. Because, yeah, one's doing it to cause chaos and form their justice, the Riddler, and then Batman, he's doing it for the sake of vengeance, but in his mind, it's like it's justice. Like they're both seeking justice, just in the wrong way. The
Mm-hmm.
only difference is that down the line, Bruce realizes like, oh shit, I've been doing this the wrong way. I've been like going about it like almost kind of like the Riddler does. Because we go back to the first scene with Batman when he's beating up those thugs. When he saves the dude in the subway, he goes towards the guy and he's like, please don't hurt me, just let me live. And it's like, that's not how you want someone to interact with someone that just saved your life.
Right.
um
Right.
but then when we get to the part in the arena and like all the guys have been subdued, but you see that big electrical wire like dangling just like feet from like the pool of water where everybody is trapped. You know, he has that split second decision. It's like, oh fuck, I need to save everybody, and he just fucking leaps off that balcony, that catwalk, uses that sick. We didn't talk about this. That sick batarang knife that he just has in
Yeah, and
his
his
like
chest
Hell
piece.
chest.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fucking sick. I thought that was dope. And he just like leaps in, he just cuts the wire, and he falls into the water. And for a second, I thought he was like they're gonna do like a whole like, oh, we need to carry Batman to safety
Oh
kind of
god, I
thing.
would
But
have
no,
hated that. That would have ruined the movie for me.
Pull a
That would
Spider-Man
have
3.
I'm
ruined the movie, like
I'm
the whole
glad they
like
didn't.
Spider-Man 3 or whatever,
Yeah,
or
I'm
Spider-Man
glad
2.
they I'm glad they didn't, because we got something even better. Just like everybody's trapped under like the staging, like the
Mhm.
stage parts of the stage that collapsed, and he's reaching out a hand to like help people out, and everybody's hesitant because they're looking. It's like, oh fuck, that's the Batman. He's
Right,
like,
they're still afraid of him there.
they're
Hmm.
still afraid of him. But
Like they
then,
they still think he's a threat.
yeah, but then throughout the movie, they've made it clear that when they have a scene where Bruce, whether he's Bruce Wayne or Batman, when he's in a scene with the mayor's son, they have to just look at each
Yes.
other. They never talk to each other. They just like look at each other. And then it wasn't until the end of the scene where they're in the arena where they both make eye contact again, and then as he's reaching his hand, the kid, extends his hand, and he's the first one to like, accept Batman's help. And
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
after that, everybody's just like, oh fuck, if this kid's gonna fucking do it, let's do it. And then Batman helps everybody, you know, escape the arena. And then you see the whole scene when everybody's getting airlifted off of the roof. And then you had the girl that Batman was carrying to the lift for the helicopter, and then she, because out of fear, she immediately just like grabs on to like his arm,
Mm-hmm.
it's like not letting go, and then it's so perfect. Like they do such a good job just as Batman. Just like, he doesn't have to say anything. Like you can just see, his like what you can see of his face or like his
Right.
eyes, and you just like look, and it's like he has that like look. It's like, hey, trust that it'll be okay, and everything will be fine. And then she lets go when they lift her up, to safety. But it's like at that point, like we are getting the Batman that everybody knows and loves. Whether he's a vigilante or not, it's like everybody respects and like admires Batman for being a hero. So now, whenever we do get the sequel, we can start off with a Batman that everybody appreciates, and like the Batman that we're kind of used to seeing, but like he'll still be kind of young, but like he's moving towards that legendary Batman that we're used to.
Yeah.
And I thought they did it so well. I thought it
Mhm.
was
Definitely.
fucking great.
And that's essentially the movie. We see Selena and Bruce kind of part ways or whatever. Um, Before we move on to what I wanted to talk to next, because we're almost done. I just wanted to tell you what I didn't like about the movie.
Okay.
Because I really liked everything else, but for me, in some scenes or how it was brought up, I felt like the romance between Selena and Batman was a little forced for me. I just didn't see that progression of. I just didn't understand that progression for me. So I felt like the times that they had their moments of like intimacy, that kiss or whatever, it just it felt so forced to me. Like they needed to make it happen. I don't know if you guys felt that way, if you guys minded at all, but that was probably my biggest issue with the movie was that the romance piece it it just didn't flow well with the overall theme, and I'm sure they had to just break it up with it. But that's my only complaint about the movie is I just felt it was a little out of place for me.
It was just kind of like touched on like a tiny bit. Like from what I was just like thinking, it's like the first time that like she kisses him, it was more kind of like a maybe like playful, but also kind of like
Like a
you
femme
know,
fatale type of like
yeah, just kind of
move.
like like maybe like asserting dominance in a way because this is like it was like very like early into like their partnership, so that's what was kind of weird. But then when we got to the point where they've been teaming up for a while and they kind of kiss again, it seemed like they're trying to go for like a little bit more of like a romantic kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do kind of agree that it was kind of like not entirely out of nowhere, but it's like, all right, I guess we can do that now because everybody knows that they're an on again, off again kind of like
Thing.
thing in just
Do
like the
you
Batman universe.
do you feel like your opinion of the movie would have changed if those scenes weren't there? Like, do you feel like those moments make or break your opinion of the movie for you?
Nah,
Okay.
I I felt like they were such a short. If if they lingered on those for too long, maybe, but like it wasn't even like 30 seconds like per kiss, you know. So for me, it didn't like bother me too much. It was like if anything, it was just like, oh, okay. And then I just kind of moved on with the plot, you know.
Do you feel like this Catwoman was a better Catwoman than Dark Knight Rises Catwoman? Because I sure do. I know. Dark Knight Rises is like Joel's favorite movie,
Oh my
so it's hard for him.
god! I just said it isn't. uh,
Joel, would you like to chime in?
um, just on what I found out recently, which is like Nolan passed up Zoe Kravitz because she was too ethnic, kind of soured it a little already for me. But it's just how I am.
Oh
Um,
boy, that's bad timing for everything going on right now with his new movie too.
I know,
That he's
and
doing.
Anne Hathaway did a great job, but Zoe Kravitz fucking knocked it out of the park. So that's my thoughts on that. Um, yeah, I think. Okay, I mean, I said it was a 10 out of 10. I will nitpick. Uh, just for me, the immersion of it's because we played this game a lot. The murder mystery trivia game. Aldano's Riddler sounded like the same contestant host. He's like, "All right, guys, we're gonna play the game now," and I just for a second I couldn't disassociate them. So that's just
Oh,
me.
like when he's wearing the
Oh,
mask.
Yeah, yeah. It's like,
Lord.
"All right, Bruce," and it's just like, "Oh no, it's murder mystery trivia too." Yeah, but that's just a nitpick, really.
Okay.
Something.
So we've talked about the movie. I think we all in general enjoyed it, of course. What do you guys think moving forward with what's to come for the DC? What do you think that this movie means for the future of the DCU? We've already got confirmation that Colin Farrell will be reprising his role as the Penguin in his own HBO show. But
That'd
what
be
about
great.
everything else? We have a lot of movies that got pushed back this year that are now next year. Aquaman and The Flash got pushed back, which what was really funny for me, just as a quick aside, that when I was watching that movie, I saw like the Future of DC 2022 trailer that with like the Black Adam and all that coming out in 2022. And I was like, oh, they probably should remove this from the theaters because they just pushed all these movies back. What do you guys think? What do you think this means? Uh, do you think that we're going to get more type of content like this? Do you think, do you think the fans are reacting well to this movie enough to where Warner Brothers is going to like get it together and just let these creators do what they do best?
I hope so, because I feel like this movie did so well, and hopefully this shows like the Warner Brothers executives like, okay, maybe we should, dial back on like our whole universe plan, and then maybe you know, kind of duck and weave between like what can be just like a standalone and like what can serve a good purpose as like an EU kind of movie. Um, as far as what I kind of hope for this series, like when it becomes a series, um, they left so many interesting ideas on the table just for like small things that showed up in this movie. Like Joel said, like they kind of teased like the Venom, the Titan formula. So maybe we can actually get like a decent Bane. No offense to Tom Hardy's Bane, but like, let's get a more accurate Bane.
No, you want the Batman and Robin Bane, the most
Oh,
comic accurate Bane we've ever had.
oh yeah, with like, his zero
Freeze
dialogue.
is coming.
Um, but like we have that. You know, I know this was a whole spoiler cast, but like spoiler for like the end of this movie where maybe the Riddler is already in, or not the Riddler, but the Joker is already has a history with Batman because we see him in Arkham. So maybe we'll get a new Joker down the line. Um, One thing that like I had to like look this up, kind of diving deep. But remember at the end of the movie they had like that Riddler like URL
Mm-hmm.
thing. So that's an actual like URL for a promotional website. And apparently when the movie came out, they updated it to have a little bit more information. And apparently someone kind of deciphered the little riddle that was on the website, and it had a reference to, I forget which exact comic it was, but it was a Batman comic that had to do with Two-Face. So
Interesting.
we might get a new Harvey Dent in the next movie as well, which I think would make sense because it seems like with this like down to earth kind of like Batman story has to do a lot with like corruption in leadership in the government, and Harvey Dent would certainly fit that narrative.
definitely.
You know, a guy that was trying to do good for Gotham and it ended up kind of blowing in his, pun intended, blowing up in his face. And then becoming the villain that he becomes. You know, that would like in that kind of universe would be interesting to see how they would tangle with that. Maybe trying to bring in a new villain that hasn't really seen a live action version and see how they could kind of balance making a real life version. I don't know if I told you. Talked to Joel about this, but after we saw the movie, I was talking to Fernando and saying like, if they play it right, they could do an interesting take on Clayface. Because
Interesting.
we couldn't have like the supernatural like Mudman like Clayface, but like I just thought about this. Like, so what if the Clayface in this universe is a like we keep like the failed actor kind of like background that Clayface has, but we use that as a baseline to where like maybe Clayface is very good with like movie like face prosthetics, and he's very good like with some studying time can mimic and impersonate like almost anybody. So like what if he could like kidnap a high ranking official of like the Gotham's like government and then in like pose as them, or maybe with some like deep fake stuff, like, you know, create fake evidence to kind of like control the government of Gotham.
Yeah.
Like it would be interesting. It'd be interesting. Like, yes, it's cool that we would see like the usual like Rose Gallery, but like let's try to get creative with this. You know, this is a whole new, you know, Batman universe that we can play around in. You know,
Right. You can take these characters and really evolve it to fit kind of the universe that they've set up, right? So like the Riddler is a real person, right? This is just a person with radical ideas who took action on them, right?
yeah.
What about you, Joel? Any final thoughts or anything else about the DCU? Anything else that you want to see that you have in mind? What you got going on?
Really quick for you. So we kind of glossed over. I know Brian was laughing about it. So first thing when Alfred wakes up, Bruce Wayne fucking yells at Alfred.
Oh, I know.
Like, why'd you lie to
And
me? He's like, this motherfucker just got out of a coma and you're yelling at him. I just want to know what you thought of that before I go into your question.
I thought it was really kind of a bratty thing to do, if that makes sense. Like
Oh,
this
yeah.
man,
Oh,
but
for
then again,
sure.
that just kind of shows you his emotional intelligence at that point,
Yeah.
and situational awareness of your fucking father figure who raised you just almost got blown up because of you, and your first thought is you're a fucking liar. You can't believe you lied to me because of my daddy. Like what? How does that make any sense to anything? That was wild to me. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. That was my thought in the movie. I was like, this motherfucker is like this man is on his deathbed, and you're over here like griping on him over some fucking old shit. That was me.
Right. We shared our thoughts about that. Yeah, it's like, what the fuck, Bruce? Anyway, but it does play into his character, the emotional stunting and his parents not being there. But yeah, DC, they would be smart to continue this universe and not breathe down Matt Reeves' neck or whoever else comes in next. Expand it. I think this is a gold mine, and it just shows like what they did with James Gunn and what they did with this. If they don't breathe down their necks and not say you need to catch up with Avengers, look what became of it. This is fucking great. As far as the future goes, I'm a little excited for the DCEU just because I want to see what they do with Flashpoint. It has all the Batman. I don't know if it's gonna have this one, but you know, just nostalgia. That's calling me. Aquaman 2. I just want to see if they make him do better than the first one. First one was a little rough. I'm not gonna lie. I'm being generous. I'm being pretty generous. I feel my dad loves the movie though, and Black Adam looks fun. You know, I hope they go the way of Shazam. You know, that one was like good. It's fun. It knew what it was, and you know, it wasn't trying to be like a bazillion things like BVS. So as far as the future goes, I think it looks good. This is a turning point. You know, for me, Marvel is still fun and good, but some days I do feel like, yeah, the formula is a little. But then sometimes I, you know, like No Way Home, I was like that. wow, that was really good. But also, it's Spider-Man, it's what we expect at the same time. But um, I just think it's good stuff. I want them to continue on it, and as long as they don't do some weird choices, I think they got it. Like, I can't wait to see more, and I still stand by. We're gonna say I'm probably stand by it for a while. If they continue the path of this way they're doing this Batman, it'll be better than the Nolan one, and that for a while I think was the standard for what people had for Batman.
I think what people are realizing is that they don't have to be these big. I mean, this movie was still like a $200 million movie. I think it was still a fucking massive production, but I don't think that they need to be the spectacle that the Nolan Batmans were. Right?
Yeah.
This isn't a massive like you know the Christopher Nolan Batman movies are a spectacle from start to end all the way. I mean, he drives a fucking tank for 3 movies, and I'm glad that people are kind of coming to terms that we don't need that type of like stimulation to enjoy a movie. Like this was a pretty good slow burn movie if you really think about it. It's a detective movie. And like I said, my biggest thing about the future of DC is I just really want them to let creators be creators. Stop letting your own corporate interests take over. That's what ruined movies like the original Suicide Squad is that they're like, oh no, you need to do this or no, you need to do that, and just let it be what it's gonna be and let the audience decide. Um, they gave control to James Gunn to do the Suicide Squad movie, and it was one of the better movies that we saw last year. I think it was right. Suicide Squad was last year, right? 2021.
I think so.
Yes.
So I am apprehensive about Aquaman a little bit. The Flash, I think Barry Allen as a character is already pretty quirky and crazy, so I kind of know what I'm getting myself into for the Flash. Black Adam, same kind of way. I mean, I like Shazam. We know who Shazam is, but I'm curious to see what they'll do with Black Adam, especially because Doctor Fate's in it, and Doctor Fate's probably one of my favorite DC characters because he looks dope as fuck. Um, like I said, all I want them to do, if they ever hear this, which I highly doubt that they will, but if they ever hear this, just trust your writers, trust your creators. They know what people who are in the fandom, they know what we like, and just let them bring it to the big screen.
I want to do a budget report real quick. So, estimated this movie's budget was 185 to 200 million dollars. As of recording, box office is 472.2 million dollars.
Yeah,
Nice.
So, Warner Brothers,
making it happen. I
this
mean,
makes money.
they're
This
still
makes
get
money. Do
this
good
makes
stuff.
money. They're getting their check. Any final thoughts? Anything else that we want to say before we sign off for this episode, this review episode?
First, Brian.
Yeah, just trust your directors. You know, we we've seen what can happen if you just let a plan go through, and you know, hopefully we can start getting more DC movies like this.
I
I
agree.
want like I am kind of sad that it's kind of seems like it's too late to get a cyborg movie because they pretty much chased off uh
Fisher.
yeah Fisher. Sorry, I had a brain fart for a second. um because I really liked him as Cyborg. Cyborg's one of my favorite DC characters. And so it's just kind of sad that, we just because of bad dealings and poor treatment, we've kind of lost a good opportunity to make something good. But I hope that Warner Brothers has kind of learned their lesson and that they kind of keep on this creative path that will hopefully lead down to many more enjoyable movie theater experiences.
Cool.
Just I forgot to mention that practical effects hallway fight scene with the guns was top tier shit, good shit. The practical effects in this movie were amazing. I want to see more. But yeah, strong, fun, good, solid Batman film and good superhero movie too. I say. And DC, if you ever do listen, this is what you need to do. This is it. This is the formula. You don't need any others. Just trust your creators, like Marcel was saying. All right, that's it.
Well, yeah, guys. Well, hey, thanks so much for sitting with me today. This was such an awesome movie. I'm glad that this movie exists, and I 22 is already well in full swing, but I think this definitely is probably my favorite movie of the year so far. I can't even remember what other movies I've seen this year already, but yeah, I think from all of us here, just thanks for listening, guys. We hope you have a very, very, very great day if you're listening to this in the morning or if you're listening to this at night. Do what you do, but I think from all of us here, we'll catch you on the next one. I know we have a lot of stuff coming out this year, and I think next we'll see what happens next. But good night, everybody, or good afternoon, whatever you guys are doing. I'll talk to you later.
Hell yeah.
Same bat time.
Same
bat
bat place.